Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents My 60 Years on the Plains, Trapping, Trading, and Indian Fighting by William Thomas Hamilton. Narrated by A.T. Chandler. The Western Mountaineer. In writing this book, the author had only one end in view, that of relating in a simple way his experiences as a mountaineer. In these days, when such experiences are fast becoming a thing of the past, the story is of special interest. The mountaineers as a class were unique. Life itself had little value in their estimation. They were pushing, adventurous, and fearless men who thought nothing of laying down their lives in the service of a friend, or often, it might be, only as a matter of humanity. Theirs was a brotherhood in which one man's life was entirely at the service of any of its members, regardless of friendship or even of acquaintanceship. Equipped with nothing but their skill and endurance, a few ponies, a gun or two, and provisions enough to last them for the day, they set out to make their way through a vast wilderness that held all the terrors of the unknown. They became self-reliant and encountered obstacles only to overcome them with a dash and courage which amaze and delight us. Mr. William T. Hamilton is a living example of this type of men. He is now in his 83rd year and is still in full possession of his acute intellect. He is a general favorite wherever he is known and is familiarly styled Uncle Bill. He spent his whole life, from the time he was 20, on the plains, and is an authority on Indian life and customs. He was also acknowledged by all to be the greatest sign-talker on the plains, either Indian or white, and was able to converse with all tribes. All Indian tribes use the same signs, though speaking a different language. Sign-talking among Indians will soon be a lost art, for the present generation is not handing its knowledge down to its children. In 1882, while Mr. Hamilton was a witness in the Star Route trial in Washington, the Smithsonian Institute endeavored to photograph these signs, but with indifferent success. The author has been extremely modest in describing the Indian fights, stating only the simple facts. These simple facts accentuate the valor and intrepidity of the trappers when brought to bay by hostile tribes. His story also gives, for the first time, an account of 3 years of the life of the great scout and mountaineer Bill Williams, one of the prominent figures in the early history of the plains. To the efforts of these heroes we owe the great advances civilization has made in the West. They reclaimed this vast and valuable territory from the outlaws and the Indians. They blazed the trail that was to lead the frontiersmen to valuable deposits and rich agricultural regions. They set an example for courage and perseverance, which will keep their memory always bright in the heart of true Americans. Hilma S. Sieber, Park City, Montana, August 1905. Chapter 1. The vote that made me an Indian fighter. St. Louis. I joined Bill Williams' party. The boy catches on. A parley with Kiowas. Friendly Cheyennes. A trader's trick. My first sign talk. A good trade. Swift runner, my friend. Athletics and longevity. On the River Till in Cheviot Hill, Scotland, in the year 1825, 25 men formed a company for the purpose of emigrating. These men built themselves a bark and, when ready to sail, held a council to determine whether their destination would be India or America. A vote was taken, which resulted in a tie, thus forcing the captain to cast his ballot. He voted for America, and by doing so, destined me to fight Indians instead of hunting Bengal tigers in India. My father was one of the company, and his brother was the captain. I was just 2 years and 10 months of age when we landed at New Orleans. My father had means, and we traveled all over the States, finally settling in St. Louis 18 months later. Here I remained until I was 20 years of age, receiving 5 years of schooling. In the meantime, chills and fevers were undermining my constitution, and the doctor ordered a change of climate. My father made arrangements with a party of hunters and trappers who were in St. Louis at the time to allow me to accompany them on their next trip, which would last a year. The party consisted of 8 men, all free trappers, with Bill Williams and Perkins as leaders. These 2 men had had 15 years' experience on the plains amongst Indians and had a wide reputation for fearless courage and daring exploits. A good trading outfit was purchased, 1/3 of which my father paid for, giving me a corresponding interest in the trip. We started in the spring of 1842 with wagons and pack animals, making for Independence, Missouri, which was the headquarters for all mountaineers in those days. At Independence, we sold our wagons and rigged up a complete pack outfit, as our route would take us where it would be difficult for wagons to travel. I was still wearing my city clothes, and mountain men present asked Williams what he was going to do with that city lad in the mountains. This remark cut me deeply, and I hurried to the frontier store and traded all my fine clothes, shirts, and dickies, which were worn in those days, for 2 suits of the finest buckskin, such as these merchants always kept on hand to fleece greenhorns like myself, making 500% profit in the trade. Next morning I appeared dressed a la prairie, and the old trappers noticed the change and said, "Williams, that boy of yours will make a mountaineer if he catches on at this rate." We all went to work getting our pack outfit ready, which was accomplished before night. Next morning, the 15th of March, 1842, we started, bidding adieu to the remaining mountain men who were all making preparations to start their different routes for trapping and trading. The trappers and traders of that day were brave and reckless men who never gave a second thought to the danger in their calling. We made good time and reached Salt Creek on March 20th. Camp had just been made when we saw in the distance a small herd of buffalo coming directly towards us. Williams gave orders to corral all stock. No second order was needed with these mountain men who acted in unison like a flash when occasion called for action. The stock was barely secured when the buffalo passed in close vicinity of camp, followed by 30 painted Kiowa warriors. A wild and savage-looking outfit they were. I had seen many Indians in St. Louis at different times, but none so wild and savage as these were. It was at this time that I received my first lesson in how to deal with wild Indians, or more properly speaking, how to control their overt acts. Our packs were placed in a triangle, answering, in case of need, to a good breastwork. Each man was armed with a rifle, 2 pistols, a tomahawk, and a large knife, commonly called toothpicker. Besides this, 2 of our men had bows and arrows, and were experts with them. The Indians came up and examined our outfit and demanded pay for passing through their country. Williams gave them to understand that they would not go through the outfit, nor would they receive pay for passing through the country, informing them that this was Pawnee country. The Kiowas at that time were semi-hostile, robbing and killing when it could be done with impunity. I stood by Williams during the parley, much interested in the conversation, which was entirely by signs. The rest of the men were in what we called our fort, with stern and savage looks on their faces. Williams was well up in Indian ways and treatment in any and every emergency, and finally gave the leader, or chief as he called himself, some tobacco. They departed, looking daggers at us. Williams informed me that there was no chief in the outfit and that it was only a small thieving party led by a young brave who had 2 feathers stuck in his scalp lock. We kept close watch during the night, expecting that the Indians would attempt to steal some of our stock or attack camp. Old experienced mountain men leaving nothing to chance. Many outfits, within my knowledge, have come to grief through placing confidence in the red man, who always covets the belonging of the paleface. Nothing disturbed us during the night, and in the morning we started down Salt Creek to the Platte River, where Williams expected to find Cheyennes, hoping to trade them out of some furs. We traveled up the Platte River to Cherry Creek, seeing plenty of fresh Indian signs, but no Indians. The camp was kept well supplied with buffalo and antelope steak and ribs. The ribs are specially fine and are highly appreciated by everyone, whether mountaineer or dweller in civilization. We camped on the North Platte River about 2 miles below where Cherry Creek empties, and about sundown, 3 young Indians who had been scouting for hostiles rode into camp. They were Cheyennes, and the very ones that Williams was looking for, as they were generally well supplied with all kinds of furs. The Indians told us that their village was a short distance up the creek. Williams gave them some tobacco for their chief, old White Antelope, and told them that we would visit the village on the following day. He then invited them to supper for the purpose of finding out what the tribe was most in need of, which is quite a trick in trading with Indians, though I believe the same rule works with white men. At all events, I never knew it to fail to bring a good trade. We packed up early the following morning, but not before a few Indians had paid us a visit. They were elated at our coming, for they were acquainted with Williams and Perkins, with whom they had often traded, and were on what is called friendly terms. Perkins was the equal of Williams in knowledge of Indian science, and, like him, was brave, cool, and ready in extreme danger. We arrived at the village about 11 o'clock, preceded by our leaders who wished to select the most advantageous camp, as it was our intention to remain several days. We unpacked and put up a walled tent, which we used for a store. Our stock was put in the chief's care, and we supplied the women with all the necessaries for a feast. This is always customary if you wish to stand well, and must be given offhand and with generous impulse. Indians are close observers, and if they see that you give with a niggardly hand, they will say, "These white men love their goods and will give us poor trade. Let's trade nothing but our poorest furs." Such an unfavorable condition must be avoided at any cost, as any trader will agree who has had experience among Indians. Williams and Perkins had built a limited knowledge of sign language, but sufficient to do the trading. All these signs I learned easily, much to their astonishment. They both claimed that they would never become experts, but that if I kept on in the way I had started, I would soon be the most perfect of any white man on the plains. It came to me without any effort, and certainly surprised me. The other men had been observing my aptness and were astonished. They were indifferent sign talkers, but good in everything else that goes to make a thorough mountaineer. It has always appeared strange to me that so many intelligent men, who had been for so many years among Indians, trading and otherwise, were so deficient in knowledge of sign language. Some assert that facility in the language is due to linguistic talent. But be that as it may, as I said before, the art was acquired by me without any effort. All the principal chiefs assembled in White Antelope's lodge, where the customary smoke was indulged in, during which we were questioned as to what our outfit consisted of. Then came the feast, which included buffalo tongue, the choicest of meats, coffee, hardtack, and molasses. This last article is a favorite with all Indians. In the meantime, Noble, Dockett, and myself spread on blankets the various goods which Williams had selected for this trade: powder, half-ounce balls, flints, beads, paint, blue and scarlet cloths, blankets, calico, and knives. A certain rule must be complied with in trading with Indians, which is that you must not pay one Indian, man or woman, 1 iota more for a robe or fur of the same quality than you pay another. If you do, you ruin your trade and create antagonistic feelings throughout the village. The Indians stood in need of all the articles named, and by sundown our tent was full of furs of the finest quality. We then adjourned for supper, which was prepared by the women. After supper, I accompanied the chief's son, Swift Runner, through the village. He was about my own age, and took a great liking to me, taking considerable pains in teaching me signs. He introduced me to all the leading men in the village, telling them that I was his friend. I took special notice of a tall young boy with a particularly large nose, a magnificent specimen of a coming warrior. He was known as Big Nose, but I firmly believe he was the famous Roman Nose, who was killed by General Forsyth on the Republican River in 1868. Swift Runner told me that a large hunting party was going to start the next morning after buffalo, and that if I would like to go, he would furnish me with a good buffalo horse. I asked permission of Williams, and he consented, saying, "All right, boy, you can take my horse. He is one of the best buffalo horses on the plains." I thanked him, saying that Swift Runner had promised me one of his. The evening passed very pleasantly for me, as the young folks entertained me to the best of their ability. I was considered fairly good-looking, with smooth face, agile and quick movements. I was the youngest child, and my parents had allowed me every indulgence. They owned a farm just outside of St. Louis, and I always claimed that I was a country-raised boy. Foxes, deer, and coons were in abundance, and it followed that every boy would own a pony, providing, of course, that the parents could afford it. At all events, I possessed one of the best mustangs in Missouri, a little devil which would kick at everything and everybody who approached him, except myself. My brothers would say that we were a well-matched pair, both little devils. At home, we indulged in all kinds of athletic exercises, such as dumbbells, boxing, trapeze, and single stick, and then we had constant practice with rifle and pistol, in all of which I became very proficient. I believe that all boys should be taught in the same way. It is productive of longevity, all things being physically equal. I am at this riding past 81, straight as an arrow, supple and quick. I have never had use for glasses. Almost every day someone asks me to what I attribute my suppleness and eyesight, and I answer that common sense philosophy conforms to the teachings of hygiene. Chapter 2. Buffalo Hunt with Cheyennes, a stirring picture, my first buffalo, perils of the chase, we are feasted on our return, character of the Cheyennes, pemmican and depouiller, a substitute for bread, we leave the Cheyennes. The next morning before daylight, 50 hunters and about 20 squaws with pack animals were assembled, ready to start on the buffalo hunt. We traveled about 10 miles when the scouts discovered a herd and reported their location to the hunting chief. He was thoroughly acquainted with the topography of the country and led us on a long detour so as to get on the leeward side of the herd. As soon as we reached there, the Indians stripped to breech clout and advanced, leading their running horses. The chief now divided the hunters in 2 divisions in order to get what buffalo were wanted in the smallest possible area. It is necessary to approach as close as possible before raising the herd, for when raised, they travel fast, and no laggard of a horse can overtake them. Generally, each division has a leader who gives the order to go. We rode to within a quarter of a mile of the herd before the word was given. Here would have been a grand scene for an artist to put on canvas. This wild array of naked Indians sending forth yell after yell and riding like demons in their eagerness to bring down the first buffalo. For this is quite a feat, and is commented upon by the whole village. Swift Runner and his cousin had the fastest horses in our division and brought down the first buffalo, much to the chagrin of many a young brave who coveted that honor, that they might receive smiles from their lady loves. My pony was close on the heels of the leaders, and Swift Runner pointed out a fat cow for me. In a few jumps I was alongside and fired, greenhorn-like, at the cow's kidneys. As luck would have it, however, I broke her back and she dropped. Swift Runner gave a yell of delight at my success. I should have put the shot just behind the shoulder. There was yelling and shooting in every direction, and many riderless ponies were mixed in with the buffalo, with Indians after them, reckless if they in turn were dismounted as their friends had been, by the ponies stepping into prairie dog or badger holes. Many an Indian has come to grief by having an arm or leg broken in this way. Ponies are sure-footed, but in a run such as this one, where over 1,000 buffalo are tearing at full speed over the prairie, a dust is created, which makes it impossible for the ponies to see the holes, hence the mishaps, which are very common. All the meat required lay in an area of 3/4 of a mile. I had brought down 4 and received great praise from the Indians. I could have done much better, but, boy-like, I wanted to see the Indians shoot their arrows, which many of them used. One arrow was sufficient to bring the buffalo to its knees. They shot behind the shoulder, sending the arrow deep enough to strike the lungs. One shot there is enough for any animal in the United States. Now came the butchering, which was completed in 2 hours, and each pony was packed with 300 pounds of the choicest meat. Several Indians who had been thrown limped somewhat, but none were seriously hurt. We arrived at the village about sundown and found the whole tribe lined up to greet us and to ascertain how successful we had been. A feast had been prepared and was awaiting our coming, and as for myself, I was wolfish, which is a mountain man's expression for hungry, for I had tasted no food since 5 o'clock in the morning. After supper, incidents of the hunt were gone over and listened to with interest by all. Our party congratulated me warmly on my success, and it was commented on also by the Indians, which pleased the boys immensely. If a white man fails to acquit himself creditably, it invariably casts a reflection on all whites. The Cheyennes were, and are today, a proud and brave people. Their domestic habits were commendable and could be followed to advantage by many white families. To violate the marriage vow meant death or mutilation. This is a rule which does not apply to all tribes. Meat is their principal food, although berries of different kinds are collected in season, as well as various roots. The kettle is on the tripod night and day. They use salt when they can get it, and are very fond of molasses, sugar, coffee, and flour. They are hospitable to those whom they respect, and the reverse to those for whom they have contempt. Most tribes of Plains Indians dry their meat by cutting it in thin flakes and spreading it on racks and poles in the sun, although in damp or wet weather it is put inside lodges where it will dry out, but not so well as in the sun. Mountain men follow the same practice and use the meat when game is scarce, and this often occurs. Pemmican is manufactured in the following manner. The choicest cuts of meat are selected and cut into thin flakes and dried. Then all the marrow is collected and the best of the tallow, which are dissolved together over a slow fire to prevent burning. Many tribes use berries in their pemmican. Mountaineers always do unless they have sugar. The meat is now pulverized to the consistency of mincemeat. The squaws generally doing this on a flat rock, using a pestle, many specimens of which may be seen on exhibition in museums. A layer of meat is spread about 2 inches thick, the squaws using a wooden dipper, a buffalo horn, or a claw for this work. On this meat is spread a certain amount of the ingredients made from the marrow and tallow, the proportion depending on the taste. This same process is repeated until the required amount is secured. 1 pound of pemmican is equal to 5 pounds of meat. Buffalo tongues are split the long way and dried for future use, and thus prepared are a delicacy fit for a prince. Another important article of food, the equal of which is not to be had except from the buffalo, is depouiller, or depouiller. It is a fat substance that lies along the backbone next to the hide, running from the shoulder blade to the last rib, and is about as thick as one's hand or finger. It is from 7 to 11 inches broad, tapering to a feather edge on the lower side. It will weigh from 5 to 11 pounds, according to the size and condition of the animal. This substance is taken off and dipped in hot grease for half a minute, then is hung up inside of a lodge to dry and smoke for 12 hours. It will keep indefinitely and is used as a substitute for bread, but is superior to any bread that was ever made. It is eaten with the lean and dried meat, and is tender and sweet and very nourishing, for it seems to satisfy the appetite. When going on the warpath, the Indians would take some dried meat and some depouiller to live on, and nothing else, not even if they were to be gone for months. I've been asked many times regarding depouiller by different ones who have been astonished when told of its merits as a substitute for other food, and surprised that it was so little known except by mountain men and Indians. Trappers would pay $1 a pound for it, and I do not believe that bread would bring that price, unless one were starving. As I've said, it is a substitute for bread, and when you are invited to an Indian lodge, your host will present you with depouiller, just as you would present bread to a guest. You may be sure, should they fail to present you with the puyer, that you are an unwelcome guest. Williams concluded to move the next day, so he traded for a few ponies, sufficient to pack the furs for which we had traded. When we were ready to start, the leading chiefs assembled to say goodbye. How? And the women presented me with a half-dozen pairs of beautifully embroidered moccasins. This tribe excels all others in beadwork as well as in garnishing and painting robes. One must bear in mind, however, that the Cheyennes of 1842 must not be classified with the Cheyennes of today. When I parted from my young Indian friend Swift Runner, he presented to me the pony which I had ridden on the buffalo hunt. I named him Runner. Chapter 3. Sioux Village on the South Platte. A Pawnee horse raid. We give chase. Wonderful endurance of the Indian pony. The stock recaptured. My first shot at an Indian. Return with Pawnee scalps. Coup sticks. Counting coups. It was the intention of Williams to strike for the South Platte River in the vicinity of Laramie River, where he expected to meet with fur buyers who would be returning to Green River, and either to dispose of our furs or have them forwarded to St. Louis, which at that time was the principal fur-buying city in the United States. A few days' travel brought us to the South Platte River, and at a point 15 miles east of Laramie River, we found a Sioux village. Big Thunder was the chief, and he requested us to camp as his people wanted to trade. The Sioux were friendly in those days, especially to traders and trappers, and we had a royal time. Just before daylight the following morning, an alarm was given in the village, and all the men hurried out to find that the Pawnees, mortal enemies of the Sioux, had run off about 100 head of ponies, which had been turned out to graze a short distance from camp. The number included 2 mules and 3 ponies belonging to our outfit. As soon as the news was received, 50 young warriors hastened to saddle their best ponies. William signified his intention of going, but I told him that he was too old, and that Noble and myself would go and bring back the stock. We started with the Indians under the leadership of Young Thunder, a fine specimen of a coming chief. I rode my pony, Runner. We soon struck the trail of the Pawnees and followed it down the south side about 10 miles, and then crossed to the north side of the river. We could tell by the appearance of the trail that they were only a short distance ahead of us. The Sioux now discarded all their clothing except leggings and breechclouts, and mounted their war horses, which had up to this point been led. I put a pad on my Runner. These pads are made by filling 2 sacks with antelope hair. The sacks are generally made of buckskin, are 7 or 8 inches in diameter, and rest on each side of the horse's backbone, being sewed together on top with buckskin. Material is fastened to each side for stirrups and cinch. They would be a curiosity in the East, but are light and elastic, and a horse feels no inconvenience from them and can travel 20 miles farther in a day than under a saddle. We started at a canter, Young Thunder in the lead. After going about 8 miles, we noticed that sand was still sliding in the hoof tracks ahead. This was a sure indication that the Pawnees were but a short distance in advance. We now went at about half speed, the Indians becoming alert. Passing over a divide, we could plainly see a cloud of dust about 2 miles in advance. At about the same time, the Pawnees must have discovered us, for there appeared a scattering just as if stock was being urged to greater speed. We gained rapidly on the Pawnees, and were soon close enough to determine that the party consisted of 12. They were trying their best to get the herd to a cottonwood grove on a bend of the Platte River. It was at this time that I discovered the wonderful endurance of the Indian pony. Young Thunder gave a war whoop, which was the signal for a charge. The ponies bounded forward as an engine when the throttle is thrown wide open. The Pawnees heard the yell and left the herd of stolen stock and made for the grove, frantically urging their ponies to greater speed. 2 of them went to sleep before they reached the cover, 10 getting safely to the grove, thankful of saving their lives, knowing that the Sioux would be satisfied with the 2 scalps and the recaptured herd. Several of the ponies were close to the grove, and Noble and I dashed at full speed and turned them away.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?